Looks like we're live. Hello, good afternoon,
Hello.
good morning, good evening for anyone joining us today. This is a Sentry 201 workshop that will be covering better agent performance with Sentry context and AI tools. I am Serge. I am the chief agent whisperer, or some might say I'm a developer experience engineer here at Sentry. And we decided to do this one a little bit differently. I have Peter joining me here. And Peter, if you want to do a little intro.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Peter McCarron. I just joined as a technical product marketing manager on our team. I need a cool title like Serge, though. Like, I just feel like chief agent whisperer. Like, that's just like mine is like long and boring. But yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I am officially 1 month in at Sentry. So like, this is exciting for me because I've been trying to learn the product a little bit more. And I feel like we're going to dive into some really cool stuff.
Absolutely. Putting you on the spot a month into working at Sentry to know all the answers to the questions that are going to come up is my guilty pleasure. So,
All right. Hot seat time. Hot seat.
all right. So, just a little bit of housekeeping. So, for anyone joining, if you're on the resources page and you see us in a smaller view, I believe at the bottom there's controls and you can hit expand, which will put us in full screen view. We're going to be sharing a little bit of code, a little bit of UI. So, for you to follow along, it will be best to see us in full screen. There is a chat on the right hand side. There are a few polls that we have put together in the polls tab. So go ahead and click in there and you can start answering some of the polls just so we get a little bit of context about our attendees. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling in from. Always interested to see how people are, at what time they're coding with their agents, and obviously keeping us in the background while your tasks are being completed. So let us know in the chat. We have Alex from Amsterdam. I'm from Toronto. Peter, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Awesome.
So, mountain time.
So we are across multiple time zones here. For anyone that's also watching the Argentina and Egypt game, let me know who you're rooting for. Who are you rooting for in the World Cup? There's a lot of upsets this time around. Someone's in Hawaii up early. Good morning. I also saw Brandon say that he can only choose one option in the coding agents. I am with you. I also use a bunch of them. So this is more of like, what is the preferred one and the top one that you reach for when you open up a new terminal session or an ID. At the end of the workshop, we will also have a feedback survey. And for everyone that enters, you get put into a draw to win a Sentry t-shirt from our really cool swag store. I'm wearing one of them. There's some stuff on the back. There's a lot of really cool shirts there. So yes, and the feedback obviously helps us make sure that we're making the right content for y'all. With all of that out of the way, I'm just going to share my screen real quick, and we're going to go over kind of what we will be talking about today. Now, this, like I mentioned, is part of the Sentry 201 series. This is the third session, and the last one, I believe, we're wrapping up. We're going to do them again, but the first one was with Lazar, who talked about integrations and kind of getting, once you have Sentry set up, what are the best next steps that you can do, which is connecting your GitHub integration, your Slack integration, and a bunch of other things. I definitely highly recommend checking that one out. There was also a session with Kyle last week that talked about dashboards, tracing, and using logs and application metrics. So again, diving a little bit deeper beyond the auto instrumentation that Sentry provides when you instrument your application. And today, as I mentioned, we're going to be diving a little bit more into agentic workflows, both with kind of like human in the loop, but then also kind of taking a step further. And as we look at how we interact with agents these days, I mean, there are ways where you're sitting in front of your laptop, you have a coding session going, and you're going back and forth with your preferred agent. And Sentry becomes a really valuable resource for those agents to have really important context on all the things that are happening in production in your application. But we also are investing a lot of resources and are trying our best to make sure that we can set up systems that help your software kind of fix itself. We're calling it the like self-healing loop. But again, this kind of like there's a lot of conversation around loops these days, and there are people like Boris who works at Claude Code that says, "Oh, you shouldn't be prompting anymore. You should be writing loops, and agents should be doing a lot of the work themselves." Depending on you can sit on very different sides of this conversation, and again, it's a very gradual spectrum. But we are trying to make sure that at any step of the way, your agents and you have the right context to make sure that when something breaks, you know why it broke, how it broke, and obviously how to fix it. Peter, are you one of those multiple Claude Code sessions? Are you in a bunch of loops? What's your typical workflow these days?
Yeah, I also dropped in the question. I'm curious, we got loopers or prompters and what that are watching this. Me, I am guilty of having about like 4 or 5 tabs open when it comes to just having like different Claude sessions. Only becomes problematic for me every now and then when I realize I'm doing kind of like 2 separate things to the same app. But I just find that like I like having that control. And if I think loops are great, but I also like having sort of that manual validation that I get to do, right? Like I get to kind of like look through it. I get to do the QA. I get to poke around with it. And so while it's great to have like an agent, sort of help me work through a problem, sometimes one of the challenges I find if I'm not able to get that sort of like review step, then I can't validate that like whatever they validated is the right thing. And so one of the things I love about the way we're approaching self-healing here is that like we give you that moment. We give you that moment to sort of like look at things and say, hey, did this work? Did it like do the thing that I wanted it to do? And do I agree with the methodology that it took? So guess I'm just a prompter, just run multiple sessions. No sub agents for me just yet.
And again, things like this change every single day, so you never know what you're going to be like next week.
Exactly.
Awesome. We got Brandon in the chat prompting, so I can learn from what the agent is actually doing. That's actually a really good point. I've been a software engineer for the past 12 years, and I've gone through this loop of debugging software myself painstakingly a lot of the times, trying to figure out what's going on. And you learn so many things along the way that are so important to making sure that in the future, when you're building software, it doesn't follow the same mistakes that it did. And a lot of the time these days, I find that I'm very skeptical of some of the work that the agents are doing when they claim that they're like, I understand the full context, but they only read like one file. And yeah, I think having a closer grip on what's going on with your agents definitely helps you understand what the agent is doing, but also being able to not just tell it what to do, but also ask it like, what's going on here? Why did this break? And in virtue of that, you're learning as opposed to just like telling it what to do. So
you're absolutely right, Serge.
That sounds like Claude. I don't know. I don't trust you. So in terms of things you can take away from this workshop, obviously we're going to go through, Peter has a demo. I think he wanted to be part of this workshop because he has a product that he's working on and he wanted to shill it to people to make the next $1 million application. And this is one way to demo it. So we're going to go through a demo that Peter has put together. We're going to set up Sentry in his project. We're going to talk about how to set it up properly in your coding environment. And then there are a few kind of like automations that our team has put together, as well as another team at Sentry that we use with Cursor that I'm going to share. And there are a couple of takeaways that you can take with you. So there's the GitHub link here, and I'm sure Alex will, or I think I posted it at the beginning of the chat here. So the 201 workshop, there's a couple of markdown files in there that you can probably send to your agent and be like, hey, follow these and figure it out how to get set up. Always recommend checking out our cookbooks. We're updating those very frequently. And here you can find a bunch of different ways to use Sentry. I'll make sure that I'm zoomed in a little bit more. But if you're looking for different workflows, difficulty, like let's look at all the things that you can do with the MCP server. And so here are a few recipes that you can see and take with you. So for example, auto triage and fix user feedback. Just copy this page, send it off to your agent, or follow it along yourself, and it'll explain how to set up your cursor automation with the Sentry MCP server. Now, I will stop talking and stop sharing my screen, and we're going to dive into what Peter has been working on, the application, and take a look at how we can get Sentry instrumented in there.
So this is going to be critical for me, Serge, because I definitely need your help. And as you mentioned, as much as I love like working here, and this is great, I think coffee is kind of my passion. And so I decided just to like shamelessly steal the Sentry branding and create my beautiful coffee lab. And so I don't know if that's what like folks are enjoying right now, but like our coffee lab is, the whole purpose here is that we're trying to give you some great tools to really get you started. We're going to have like a grind calculator, so that way we know exactly how to get like the most like flavor notes out of our things. We can create profiles. We can look at world maps, so we can see like what different regions look like, save these directories. And so I've been building like some cool stuff in here. And I'm not going to lie, it's pretty buggy right now. So like, let's like, just to give you an example, right? Like, I'm going to create this profile page, and I have one for myself, which is, I think, pretty cool. The fact that I can do this and load up this information and see like what my coffee preferences are and things. But like, I think this is not, it's kind of flaky. Like, let's say I wanted to, maybe set up a different one. Right now I can't even log out. Oh, there's my button. If I wanted to create this profile and I say like, I'm going to call it, I love coffee. And we can walk through all our different things and like have like Denver in here. So Colorado, we can add like bios, handles. We'll skip that for now. Add some different flavor profiles. Maybe we like Guatemalan coffees. I don't know, Serge, what region do you like, or what's your preferred process? Do you know? Is it, and we'll bump this up for you so you don't have to like look too closely. Do you like washed, natural, light?
Oh, I'm experimental all the way, every single time.
Okay. Yeah. So like we can do all this cool stuff and save all these things, get our setups in place. Like maybe you're using a Hario and have an example, but I keep running into this issue and I don't know what the heck's going on. That every time I set up my profile, you saw it worked previously. Like clearly I have a flow, like I'm able to do that. So that would be kind of cool to fix. The other part is just like, I feel like there's so much more that I could uncover here. So some of the cool things that I'm doing here is I'm trying to really work with like a grind calculator. And I don't know, I saw someone else who's from Denver in here. If you haven't tried Huckleberry Roasters, highly recommend them. They got some great stuff. But like the whole purpose of what I'm trying to do is like make it so that I can get these cool recommendations, and I'm using Claude to actually scrape this information from like a web page and show me like some recommendations on my grind sizes and what happens here. But like you're an espresso guy, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So one of the cool things I could say like, oh, this would work really well for you, right? So we can look at the recommendation, have it run through the process for me, and give a grind recommendation about all these different things. But okay. This is kind of embarrassing. Like I'm just uncovering like all the things in here that are just like going wrong. And it's like, I just feel like I could use some help kind of understanding like foundationally how I should be getting set up here. So hoping you can walk me through this. I'm definitely like, I'm a Claude user, so I got my terminal here set up. So maybe like, let's walk through it. Like show me how I should get started.
Okay. And this actually like brings up a really good point. And like, in your local workflows, you might be able to kind of go back and forth with Claude and be like, oh, like, what the hell happened here? Why did it break? But as you saw, you went through a flow that was a happy path where you created a profile and everything was fine. So you might think, oh, it's okay. It's fine. I'm just going to deploy it. Somebody else will be in production trying to create a profile, and then that fails. And if you don't know about it, then people will get upset and they might not come back and use your application anymore. So that's kind of like,
I just feel like it's kind of sporadic, man. Like I choose different ones and like all of a sudden it's working and I get my grinds, and it's just like, it's so weird to me to be going through this. And like, I don't know. It's like, all right, well, what if I just like tried, let's see, V60, which is like the same as my Kalita. It should be like pretty close. Right. and it seems to be hanging once again, and then it fails. I just like I'm not loving this because it's just like I feel like I'm gonna put this out there for people to use, and they're just gonna find that it's just like super buggy, and I'm not gonna. My coffee business is going nowhere.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, and again, a lot of this will be covering agentic workflows, but again, we want to make sure that we know what's going on and what is actually happening. And the first step in any project that you want to make sure that you have observability set up in is to actually instrument Sentry.
Okay.
Now, we have a new CLI that we're actively working on. It's available at cli.sentry.dev. And if you go to that in the browser, you should see an instruction for installing it. Now, I don't know if you installed it before or not, but right there, right away, you will have a curl command.
I may have cheated a little bit and went ahead and already set this
Perfect.
up just
So
because, I'm trying to be on par with the 201 audience here. Y'all are experts, and I'm trying to like get a little bit ahead.
Exactly. And so there are multiple ways that you can instrument Sentry in your project. You can go to the docs, you can copy a prompt from the SDK page that you know is your application, which if you're using Next.js, if you're using a Rails backend, a React frontend, there are SDK pages in our docs for all of those. There is a wizard that was previously kind of like our best recommended way to instrument applications. But then again, you still need to know which SDK you're using to be able to pass it, like Sentry npx Sentry wizard install Next.js, and then it'll take the configuration for that. Now, with the CLI in these agentic workflows, but also if you're using it yourself, the best thing you can do is let the agent understand what application you have and how to best instrument it based on the most up-to-date information. And so the CLI comes with a command called sentry space init. And now this can run both in headless mode, which is a way for you to pass it a bunch of different options, and then the agent can kind of run this command. Or there's this like GUI, TUI, whatever you want to call it these days, interface. But this is for a user to be able to instrument it yourself, but it actually goes through an agentic workflow. So it kicks off a background agent, and it analyzes your application, figures out what framework you're using, it figures out which SDK needs to be installed. It then has an MCP server under the hood that is connected to our documentation. It will fetch the relevant documentation based on the features that you will select in the next step here and instrument that whole application.
So tell me a little bit more about that search, because so I'm letting this kind of run through, and it looks like it's analyzing my code base, which is cool. I wanted to make sure I bumped this up so people could actually see what was happening. I thought that by just doing this, it was just going to set up error monitoring. Are you saying it's going to do a lot more for me? Is it going to instrument because some of those errors I'm running into, I feel like are really rooted in my backend and my API, and I would love to have a better understanding of how it's actually working.
Yeah. So this is a common question that we get a lot, and just kind of like an overall idea of Sentry is it just takes care of my errors, and I'm just going to send it up monitoring, and anytime there is a 500 error or a try catch and something got caught, or there's an unhandled error, Sentry will alert me about that. And absolutely, yes, that is the case. But the best part about Sentry is it has other features that provide, again, that additional context to agents to be able to reason about your application, its performance, and all the things that it's doing a lot better. So it will ask you if you want to set up tracing. So tracing will be making sure that every single request in your application, from your database queries to browser requests to caching and CDN, all of that is instrumented with telemetry. And tracing is a bunch of spans, and every single operation will have timing associated with it. So you'll see how long each request took, what is the stack, the ordering of all the different requests. It will help you instrument automated alerting for things like N+1 queries and slow database queries. So tracing is super, super valuable for investigating the performance of your application that goes beyond errors. And additionally, there is going to be an opportunity for you to instrument logs, which are little breadcrumbs that you can sprinkle all over your application to make sure that at every single state of whether your application is making a decision, there's a log that then is correlated with the errors and the traces, because everything inside Sentry is trace connected, which makes the debugging experience, both for us humans in the past, but also for agents, a lot better, because everything is kind of like stitched into this one thing, which is a trace, and you have a lot of associated things with it.
Nice.
So I think you're already in the Sentry UI, which is great.
Well, so we had a little bit of a hiccup here. Going to let this go through. We're letting it process and use my existing project, but I didn't feel people didn't need to like kind of jump into this multiple times. It looks like it actually tried to integrate this into my project right now. So, but to your point, like this is actually like really, really easy to do. And one of the cool things is that I even had like the AI agent like help me out with setting up some dashboards, which when you think about like performances, like that's got to be like a great way to be able to instrument. Like I didn't have to know how to be able to set this up. I imagine like there's a lot of folks on here who probably have been doing this for a while now, but like me being able to look at things like my latencies and like understanding like my API calls, but like this was all instrumented actually via an agent.
Yeah.
We actually had a question come up in here in the chat here about if you already have Sentry set up in your applications, like, can you run this init process still? Like, will that allow you to do that, or will it cause any problems?
So the init process, I believe at this point is, it will analyze your configuration, and I think it'll try to override your existing instrumentation. Now, does that mean that you had poor instrumentation and it'll do a better job? Potentially. But I do know that the team is working on these like verification flows within the CLI that will actually help test the instrumentation and make sure that it's instrumented correctly. So kind of like, you can think of it as like a doctor. I know a lot of CLIs have a doctor command, and so that's definitely something that we are really excited to be working on and hopefully share with you sooner. To your point about instrumenting dashboards using the CLI, if you go back to the CLI website, so this is the landing page, but then docs in the top right corner will have all of the documentation about all of the different commands that the CLI can run. But if you scroll all the way down, there's going to be an agentic usage. So in the sidebar on the left, agentic usage. So we have a dedicated page that talks about how you can give your agents the power of the CLI and to understand it properly, which essentially is installing a skill. And now that skill will have documentation associated with all the commands, so that when you are asking Claude, hey, I'm looking to instrument the dashboard based on all the critical experiences in my application, can you do this with the Sentry CLI? It'll load up the skill, it'll understand all the commands, it'll understand the schema and the shape of all those commands, and it'll be able to help you instrument those dashboards while having real data available to instrument against, which I think is like, I haven't manually created a dashboard in the past few months, because the best thing you can do is, again, give agent the context of the CLI that will get the trace information, and it'll understand all the attributes that are available on all the traces, all the logs, all the metrics, and it'll be able to figure out what are the best dashboards that it can create.
Cool. And we had a clarification question. So it's actually cli.sentry.dev, not docs.sentry.io, or does that redirect to the same area?
Not yet. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated. We had previously a CLI that was built a long time ago, and we've maintained it for a while, and that one is responsible for doing source map uploads or build artifacts and a bunch of things that were done a certain way in the past. And we decided, instead of trying to add all this new functionality into this new CLI, we would kind of start it from scratch. And so the new CLI is getting to the point where it will have feature parity with the old CLI. And at some point there, hopefully soon, there won't be any confusion between which CLI to use, because just as people are confused, I've noticed that agents are sometimes confused about using the right CLI. And so hopefully with the next major version of the old CLI, it will be actually pointing at this new agentic, or like this new CLI that has a lot of agentic first capabilities as well. At the moment, should you use both? I would not, it depends if you have workflows that have dependency on the old CLI that the new CLI doesn't have functionality for. Again, it's only a limited subset of features that the old CLI hasn't been ported over to the new CLI with. So I would look into whether or not you can just use the new CLI, because I would recommend adopting that.
All right. Well, that's awesome. And I love that we have this like CLI and NetWizard, but I'm not going to lie to you. I know in the debate of CLI versus MCP, I am definitely kind of like an MCP person. So do we have an MCP server that we could use? Like, is that a thing? Do we have something available?
Obviously. What do you mean?
So
how to make
you're
this
telling me I
not
should go to the plugins here and maybe try installing this?
Yeah. So one thing that we've also been investing a lot of time and effort into recently is making sure that our kind of getting started with agentic usage and Sentry is very easy, whether you're using Cursor, Claude, Codex, or Grok, I think at this point. And now the kind of the best way that we can bundle together the MCP and a lot of associated skills is via these plugins. Every single one of these systems has that as a concept. And so Claude Code has plugins. And to be able to access the documentation for any of these, you were already in the Discover and you found the Claude plugin, official Sentry plugin. Now, I don't think this is the most up-to-date one. We are working on it using our own Sentry for AI repo. So if you go ahead and go to AI, Sentry for AI. So this is just the MCP.
Sentry for AI. And then we have our agent skills in here.
There should be a GitHub link to the GitHub repo that's Sentry for AI.
All right.
And I posted it in the chat here if you are seeing it.
Let's pull it up. All right.
And if you scroll down to the README, there's going to be a documentation for, so it supports Claude Code right at the top there. And there will be a perfect. And so we have this Sentry for AI repo that houses the skills, but then we also have build scripts that will build out these plugins that are customized for each one of the coding agents, because they do have their own subtle differences. Claude Code will have ways that you can configure skills where they have model invocation. Some of them aren't invocable by the model. They have to be invoked by a separate skill. And anyway, that's a lot of implementation details. But the idea is that whether you're using any of those 4 IDEs, right now the best way to connect and get everything set up locally is using these plugins. And so, Peter, I believe you're going through and authenticating. Perfect.
There we go. So, all right. So let me ask you this. I saw a bunch of skills that were listed down there. If I were to just prompt Claude right now and say like, hey, could you look through my repository and try and like instrument some Sentry like error monitoring and traces in here, where you think we could kick that off and maybe use that to try and build out this, build out my dashboards a little bit better, build out my projects a little bit better?
Yep. So I don't think it'll be necessarily directly impacting your dashboards, but to the question that was earlier about instrumentation, these skills are definitely also kind of like the resources for agents to better understand what's like best in class instrumentation for Sentry, that we and our SDK team maintains and updates quite frequently. So I believe this should kick off and activate the right skills. We are working on iterating this further and having really good workflows set up that are like action oriented with the plugin, where whether it's debugging or instrumenting or just like understanding it better, there'll be flows that are more optimized rather than these like collection of different skills that are specific to the SDKs.
For sure. So this is awesome because like I do feel like what this goes back one of the earlier questions that we got around like, should I use the CLI or like should I use MCP? I feel like that's a constant debate that we're having. And like the answer is really like you can kind of do both, right? Like you have the ability to be able to like just fully architect out your application. And because we have these skills that are sort of like shared, it's really going to help me really make sure that I get a full view of like what is going on inside of my application. So this feels like really awesome. I'm going to have to let this run for a while, I think, before it's going to actually like be able to get everything set up and configured. But the first thing that you saw that I loaded is that it loaded that SDK setup skill.
Yeah.
So like we already know that it's going to detect my app just like the wizard did, where it just like looked at my framework. It understood like, okay, this is a Next.js app. I love that it called out that I'm using this with a payload CMS. So we have this on the back end as well. It knows that it has to look at it gives me a nice little proposed coverage. And I feel like this is 100% just attributed to the work and the care that the team has done on the skills to make sure that we really get like a full picture of like how we should fix things.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
While it's going, and I guess it's going to ask you a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. Did you want to hop over and show something?
I think one thing that we want to make sure that we round off with your setup and your application is making sure that Seer and everything is configured properly inside Sentry.
Oh yeah. Okay. We'll add some placeholders. Make sure Sentry. Yeah. All right. Seer. So let's open up my Sentry. And so you're saying that I should make sure that I have this. So I think we're going to need to create a new project in here just because I did have this set up something brand new for us. So why don't I start it from the very beginning and you tell me like how I should get this actually set up for Seer. So, cause I am actually using this in like a repo. I do have this like kind of hosted somewhere. So I'd love to get the walkthrough. So we know there was Next.js. Definitely want to get alerted on any of my high priority issues, right? Yep. I probably should make sure that I hook this into Slack, right?
Yep. So
yeah.
Again, we're not going to cover this in too much detail here, but if you were to take a look at the Sentry 201 workshop that was run by Lazar, Alex, I don't know if you have a link to it easily accessible that you can drop in the chat, but he goes into detail about connecting your Slack and your GitHub integrations into Sentry to be able to set up alerts, as well as configure your source code mapping and Seer in the future. So those are kind of like prerequisites for making sure that everything can be connected so that you do have access to these things in Slack and in the Sentry UI. But yeah, all you have to do right now is create the project. Now this will create a new DSN, which is essentially a unique identifier for this is the project destination for all the data that gets that needs to be sent to it. A lot of people think this is an environment variable and that it needs to be safe. The DSN needs to be public because your browser, which is obviously not the server, still needs this kind of like destination to be able to send data to it. I see a lot of concerns, and again, there's a lot of conversation around like making sure that you don't give your secrets to the coding agents. The DSN is very safe, so you can just copy the DSN, go back to Claude and be like, hey, can you make sure that this is the DSN that this is pointing at? This is not the same as the auth. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say also, I do love the fact that we do in here, we have the AI code setup available. And so we have the skill that we can actually download and we can pass this in as part of our prompt to make sure that we're getting this all set up and configured properly. So if we want the AI agent to be able to help me set this up, I could also just pass this in and make sure that I'm using that exact skill for that exact SDK.
Exactly. And for some of the onboarding, like if you're using 10 stack start, for example, this onboarding will actually guide you towards the CLI. So we are slowly kind of testing and making sure that the CLI in it is as best configured as possible for the framework that is being selected here, but always giving people an option to copy the agent prompt and just pass it off to an agent. That probably will change to our plugin configuration very soon as well.
Very cool. All right. So let's assume that I'm going to go get this all set up. Yep. And I got my DSN already copied over into a different screen over here. And so now it's going to take me over to issues. What should I be doing on here to make sure that it's reading from my code base properly and that it's actually going to be connected? And I'm going to throw you for a loop. I'm using GitLab for this project. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem.
No, I don't think it should be a problem. The the things that we will need to do is if we go to settings and we go to, so this is going to be your user settings. Let's actually head
Go back to
to
the project.
projects. Yeah.
All right.
And
let's go back. Let's just go. There we go. Settings. We're in our project. Let's open this up for our Coffee Lab demo. All
and
right.
Now if you hover over settings, it should be your project settings. Oh, yeah.
Nope. There we go. See, this is what I get for being the new guy on this, like trying to navigate live and just like embarrassing myself as I'm trying to do all this. So let's go back over here. Now we'll hover over the settings and we're in our project settings. Okay.
Perfect.
So,
and now there is a Seer option right at the top there.
All right.
Boom. And
so go ahead.
No. So the first thing that a new project should be doing is setting up code mapping. So this will essentially make sure that whether you're using GitLab or GitHub, your source code is connected to the project. For Seer and for not just for Seer, I think it's for your stack traces and for the MCP server without Seer to, again, have additional context and understand that, like, if this error was generated in this file or in this line of code, what file was it, where is it hosted, and how do I actually make these changes?
Okay. So what you're saying is that, like, if I were to connect this and then we're going to use the Sentry MCP server, we're now going to have the context not only of what's going on in our issue dashboard. We're not just going to collect the Sentry context, but we're also going to be able to match that actually to the code files.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be like a really great way to like empower our agents.
Yep. And again, it goes beyond Seer. It's for your suspect commits. So making sure that, like, when there is a new change that came into your repo and that code change triggered an error, you can actually see inside Sentry in the issue feed of, like, what was the commit that was responsible for this new error to appearing. So if an issue gets regressed or you introduce a new issue, connecting your source code to Sentry is kind of like one of the most important things that you can do.
All right. So we're going to actually backtrack a little bit here because I do want to let folks know that as a provider, we do support GitLab now, which is pretty cool. It's in an open beta. And the way that we're going to set this up, all we have to do is follow the step-by-step guide here. And then just create like an application inside of this. So for any of my users out here, if you've done the GitHub process, you know, it's very easy. You do the method for just connecting to OAuth, give the permissions. It's a little bit different for GitLab. We have a 3-step process that makes it super easy. If you are familiar with it, you should know that you just got to go over to your preferences. You're going to go over into your access and you're going to create a new application. So we're going to add this new application. We're going to call it Sentry. We're going to grab the redirect URI, which the team made sure to get everybody. That makes it a little bit easier. So we grab that redirect URI, and then we're going to want to make sure that we have the API scopes set up and available. So once we have that in place, we can save the application. It's going to give us some secrets available. And we'll go ahead and copy all this information. We grab our application ID. We grab our secret. We make sure that we don't reveal it. And we're not going to have any groups, and we're not going to use a self-hosted instance for right now. But once we continue through there, we authorize GitLab. We say we're going to authorize Sentry, and now I should be able to collect from both of this. And so as you can see from my screen, I can have both GitHub and GitLab, all the SCMs available for me to be able to grab here. It's going to take a moment just to like re-up and grab this, but I think this is like a great step and a good project requirement to do all the things. So we're really trying to expand the surface area that Sentry is going to allow you to be able to map code from. So yes, this will work with GitLab groups. If you notice, I did skip that step.
And if you're working with the new, what's the peer computer one? They're making this new GitHub like repository for agentic code. Let us know, because we definitely want to make sure that we're covering all of the bases here. But awesome, thanks so much for showing the GitLab flow. I'm always kind of like going through the happy paths of like, oh yeah, GitHub, easy peasy, and then you don't realize that like there's a couple more steps that make GitLab a little bit more involved. But
Oh yeah.
Codeberg support when? Alan, good question.
We got Codeberg. Or is it the other one Origin? Is that the other one that that's coming
I
out?
think so. There's as many source code managers these days as new titles that get created for roles. So it's hard to keep track of all of them. But
So going back here, let's see if we're this synced up with my repository correctly. There we go. My Coffee Lab demo is there. So I'm going to add that repository so we can integrate into this.
yep.
And so one caveat, unfortunately for GitLab right now, we only have one method, but like this handoff to agent. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Like, what does this actually entail if I were to maybe set this up with like a GitHub account?
Yeah. So, and I guess before we get into that, just a quick overview of what Seer is and how it works. So, Seer is our debugging agent that is hyper focused and tuned to make sure that when there is something happening inside Sentry, Seer is as best as it can be optimized to understand what is happening, why it's happening, and how to fix it. Now, with autofix, there are different steps that you can configure it to run to. And if you go to the automation steps drop down, you'll see there are different points. There is no automation where you don't want it to run. That's fine. There's root cause. So, root cause analysis is that kind of like understanding of the stack trace, understanding the connected telemetry like your spans and logs and metrics, and all of the if you have distributed systems, all of that information gets fed to our Seer agent, and it figures out what is the actual root cause. A lot of the time an error will be on the front end where you have a button that throws some sort of try catch, but it actually was a downstream API endpoint that failed. And sometimes when you tell your Claude, it's like, hey, my button isn't working, it won't go through the steps necessary to understand that that actually originated in this whole other service with this whole other configuration. And this was the issue. It will like try to add another try catch, or it will try to satisfy the requirements without actually having the context that Seer has to be able to do it in a way that actually fixes the root cause. Next step is our plan, which essentially makes sure that once you have the root cause analysis, what are the steps necessary for the coding agent to successfully perform a fix for this. Um, a lot of the time, this is where Sentry kind of people will configure and stop with Seer and Sentry, because the other one is the PR gets created. Now, a lot of people have invested a lot of resources into their own systems like Cursor, Cloud Agents, Codex, routines, Claude Code, automations, and all of those agents are available to Seer as a handoff. So essentially, it'll create a root cause analysis, it'll create a plan, and then it'll just hand it off to your preferred coding agent. With GitLab, it looks like Seer is the only option available right now. I am not saying that Seer is worse or better than other ones. It all depends. So I've used the handoff to Seer, and I've seen Seer create PRs that are approved and merged. And so yeah, you definitely have an option to configure it this way.
Yep.
Um,
And just as a plus one on there for like the GitLab piece, this is just a matter of like the GitLab API right now. It doesn't necessarily always work with like cursor agents or with Claude agents, which is what we utilize when we hand off to Seer. And so if you're using a GitHub repository, we have that integration because GitHub does work with those. So that's going to allow you to be able to kick off that initiation. So I'm going to set this up and have it stop after like my PR is drafted, because I figure, why not? I want to make sure that everything is working properly for me, and I'd love it to create something. But I want to hand this back to you because I know we're coming up a little bit closer to time. We want to save some time for questions.
yes.
You mentioned cursor automations, and I'm
Yes.
super curious about that because I have not tried playing around with that or played around with Claude routines. Do you want to walk us through like how that works and like maybe like some setups that you've seen?
100%. Let me start sharing my screen. There's a question in the chat from Rick. What is Seer connected in the background? Sonnet GPT, its own model. It's not its own model just yet. It's a combination of a bunch of different models. We're constantly iterating and making sure that we understand what models are best at the tasks at hand. So there's no definitive answer there. Yeah.
And then the follow-up question there about the plan. So in a lot of ways, the plan is actually the prompt. And so what we do is we actually package up the plan, and then when you do the handoff to whether you do it to Copilot agents or you do it to Cursor or if you do it to Claude, what it's going to do is it's going to say, "Can you help resolve this issue? Like, here's the proposed fix about how we want to implement that fix." So we add a little bit of like a wrapper around it as we send those off. But the plan really is like the diagnosis of like how we should solve the issue. And then what will happen is that once we actually kick that off and we send it over to the AI of your choice, we're just giving it that wonderful context and that root cause analysis so that the agent knows how to handle it.
Yep. Okay. So cursor automations. One of my favorite things that has come out in the past few months is the ability to create an automation and have Sentry be a trigger for any of that. So I don't think it's available in Claude Code yet, but the idea of routines or scheduled tasks exists across all these different agents, where essentially you can set up a fancy cron job that runs on an interval, and you can configure it to use, for example, the Sentry MCP to check all your errors, and then potentially create PRs for them. And I want to show two real examples of things that we have running in production at Sentry. One that is built by the CLI team. And so, again, there is one weekly, and I'll zoom in here to make sure that people can see, weekly Sentry issue fix. Now, I also have the JSON for that automation in the GitHub 201 workshop repo that was shared earlier. So you can just go ahead and take this, adjust it to your own preferences if you're using cursor automations. But I'm sure you can also feed this JSON blob to Claude or Codex, because this is actually not using a Sentry trigger. This runs every week on Monday at 8 a.m. Daylight saving time. And it's set up with instructions to fix real bugs in the Sentry CLI repository. And what does it do? Step one, discover open issues via the Sentry MCP. The way that it's connected here is it has the concept of tools. And when you write the agent instructions in Cursor, it'll actually suggest available tools to you based on the prompt that is in the agent instructions, which I think is really great. And so it will discover open issues using the Sentry MCP. It'll try to reproduce and understand each issue. So one thing that's amazing with Cursor background agents is it actually has its own kind of environment sandbox that gets generated for each run. And you can see there are, this one is from June that ran, and you can actually see like the desktop environment of it trying to run this automation, and you can go in and access this agent. I don't have access to it because, again, this is not on my team. But for something that I created as an automation was this feedback to feature. And the idea here was simple. We have our docs website, and at the bottom of every single page, there is a feedback widget, which is actually using Sentry's user feedback. So this is going to be a little bit meta, but if we go to the setup user feedback, so this is a documentation page of instrumenting user feedback that has user feedback at the bottom of it. And anytime this feedback gets mentioned, this is missing example of using it with Go. You can also add your optional email, and we read a lot of this feedback and we notice it. So if you want to get to us and leave some feedback, both positive and mostly negative, we'll make sure to be able to reach out to you again. I will put in my email here and submit this feedback. Now, this actually will trigger a Slack notification in our Sentry organization. I won't be showing that because I'm scared I will leak things. Peter didn't leak any secrets. I don't want to do that either. But the idea with the automation is I can look at all of the feedback that is coming in that Slack message. And again, a lot of feedback is very constructive and very easy to implement. Some of it is going to be very vague. And I wanted to make sure that the trigger isn't every single new issue that gets created. You run this automation because, again, you want to be conscious of tokens and not running automations on things that you shouldn't really be running it on. But if I see one that is, I'm like, oh yeah, Claude or Cursor can handle it, I will assign it. That will get picked up by this run, and it will gather the context from Sentry, again, using the MCP. It will understand the docs platform and how that repo works. And using Sonnet 4.6 high, it will try to deal with that feedback. It will also has its own memory where it checks whether or not this feedback has been addressed, because sometimes there will be multiple instances of feedback that I might have missed. And it'll do all of that. And at the end of it, it will have a PR that will post back in Slack into that feedback widget as a attempt to resolve that, which is a really, really cool workflow that I've used multiple times to ship things in production. It's a lot of things that you might not have time to do in your day-to-day work because you're busy, and everyone is more busy these days than ever before. But there are agents and like these workflows that exist that definitely help you do a lot of stuff on the peripheral. And again, there are small issues that might only be affecting a small percentage of your user base, and you might not think that you have enough resources to handle it yourself. But if you wake up and you already have a PR from something like Seer ready to go, and you know it addresses that issue, spending the time to review it, because we still want to make sure that there is a human in the loop that reviews the issues. I don't think we're there yet where we are fully automating this workflow and things are being shipped to production until we build up enough confidence that that actually works. But yeah, so this is a few examples of cursor automations. There are Claude code routines that you can build off of these. There are other things that you can do. Hoping that gives you kind of some inspiration in building out these workflows. And I'm curious if there are any existing workflows that people are building using the Sentry MCP. If you want to share them in the chat, that would be fantastic.
Well,
Peter, was there anything else?
This is so cool, and I love like the real world example, because I feel like this is the thing is I like, I'm thinking about my app, right? Like I'd love people to be able to submit feedback and be like, hey, this stuff broke. And then just like be able to have an agent sort of like kick that off for me and be able to like really like understand like what the problem was. And also I just want to thank you, because I'm starting to get errors now in my dashboard. Like here, like this is starting to show up. I'm actually starting to run like an auto fix, like trying to see if Seer is going to be able to help me out. And it'll actually be able, I think, to create like a new PR to be able to resolve the issues for me. So this is like, I think it's just so cool the way that we're able to package up all this context and be able to feed it to agents to be able to automate a lot of this work. And I think that's the key that we want. At least I hope people take away from this.
Absolutely. Antoine is saying, my main usage for the Sentry MCP is digging on performance issues. Fantastic. Again, that's exactly why the MCP was created in the first place, is getting that performance data from production into your local coding agent. Because a lot of the time you're also running your application locally using localhost, and your performance is fantastic. You're like, oh, this local MySQL database connection is taking a couple of milliseconds, no problem. Then you deploy it to production. Your Prisma is set up with a remote Postgres database, and now it's taking a couple seconds, and there are n+1 queries. And without that context, if you just give Claude Code your code base, it's like, oh, it's fine. So definitely love seeing use cases like that.
All right.
One thing that I wonder if you want to showcase is Seer Agent real quick as a last thing we can leave people with.
Yeah, for sure. So let me go back and share my window again, because we do want to talk about like the Seer agent and all the cool stuff that we're doing. So giving a little peek behind the curtain. So right now what I have is like, I actually had like this issue that I came up, and it found out that like one of my filters was actually broken. And what I did is able to get a root cause analysis. So here's the cool thing is that now on the Sentry issues page, if you haven't done so already, you should see the Seer auto fix once you enable it for that project. When you open this up, you can just start the root cause analysis. So it's going to try and figure out what's going on. It figured out like, okay, here are the reproduction steps, which I think is actually a really important part, because if you can't recreate a bug, if you can't do it yourself, then how do you know that it's actually broken? And so this allows us to be able to find any of the error information as well as any of the broken code. We can create a plan about how we want to be able to fix this. So we can add like a fallback for picking our filters, and then we can have it propose a code fix. And then what it'll do eventually is, let's see, we're going to say, what additional context should you use? Use my code files. And we rerun it from here. And then eventually what it's going to do is create the code change, and then I could submit it. Now, this is all taking place in the UI, right? Well, what if I just wanted to learn about an issue outside of the UI? Well, we mentioned that we had that great Slack capability. I can go into one of these issues and I could, let's say, copy the link directly to it. And I was messing around a little bit earlier, and Serge, I have Serge's agenda on here. We have a nice little workspace that him and I have been working out of, where we can have alerts and different like coffee lab issues that we want to be working on out of. And with the new Seer agent, what you can do is you can actually have it run these root cause analysis inside of like Slack. So we'll bump this up so make sure that folks can see it. So I can say, hey, Sentry, can you tell me about this issue? And so what this is going to do is it's going to run that same kind of root cause analysis, and it's going to try and figure out what's going on, help you understand whether or not we need to dig into it a little bit more. We have the ability to assign this to different users. But the other cool thing that we can do is if we have an alert set up, like remember how when we were setting up the project that we were like, oh, we're going to send alerts of any issues that are going to go to Slack. We actually can kick off that auto fix process now that we were just talking about and just showing in the Seer UI directly from Slack. So I was talking with somebody recently, and they told me that basically their first thing that they do in the morning after a weekend is they open up the dedicated Slack channel that they have, and they look at all the issue alerts that came up, and they basically can just say, fix this issue, fix this issue, fix this issue. And then Seer will kick off and run an analysis and try and propose a fix for you to help you understand what's going on. So here we have the ability now to converse back and forth with Sentry, get a better understanding, see if we can say like, hey, Sentry, what could this error be from? Converse back and forth, really try and dig into the root cause, where it's going to show us just like an initial piece about like the syntax errors and problems that we're having. So great way to be able to pull this in, and a great way to be able to just be able to talk with Seer from anywhere.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention with Seer Agent as well is it is free. So there's Seer Autofix, and there's also code review, which essentially we didn't cover here, but it will, once you have Seer set up, you can also configure autofix and code review. Code review is essentially anytime you create a new PR that is ready for review, we have our Seer agent run through it and analyze it to make sure that all the code changes that are proposed don't introduce potential bugs. And it's similar to other tools that are in the industry. Ours is, from what I hear, is less noisy, and it really kind of only hyper focuses on real production issues that could be happening. So that's Seer, Autofix, and Code Review. And then there's Seer Agent, which is what we have here in Slack. It also is available in the UI. There is an Ask Seer button at the top of any page. And the best part about it is it's not just related to issues. Like, I use it a lot to actually understand the data that is coming in to Sentry. Like if I'm on the Explore page and I'm exploring traces, I think to Antoine's point about the MCP, using the MCP to analyze performance issues. If I'm just like looking at my Sentry dashboards and I'm looking at some spikes or some spans and I'm like, where the hell are these coming from? The Seer agent is a very, very helpful resource to help me understand better what's going on in my telemetry. And because it's kind of like, especially in the UI, it knows the context of the page that it's on, it can actually give me like very, very good answers into understanding my data a little bit more. So feel free to take it for a spin in like your dashboards and seeing if like the widgets that you have set up are there could be other widgets that you can add, or if you need to update something.
One
based on the
important call
telemetry.
out. One important call out about the Slack agent, the Seer agent inside of Slack. If you've previously installed the Slack agent, you do need to go reinstall the Slack application. So make sure that you do that, because if you try to start talking to Sentry like the way I am here, while Serge is talking to you all, if you haven't updated those permissions, then it's going to be kind of problematic, and you're not going to actually get the same kind of output and back and forth like we're showing here on the right.
Yep. Awesome. I think this we're right at time. I'm checking the Argentina score, and when we started, Egypt was winning, and now Argentina is up 3-2, which is crazy. Let's take some.
Can never count Messi out.
You can never. Yeah, 3-2, crazy. We have a question from Antoine. I have Sentry posting alerts on Slack, and it's helpful. I missed the Seer's connection. How can I start tagging Seer in linear? That is a good question. There is a linear integration that we didn't cover here as well, and there is also a Seer agent that you can install into linear connected to your Sentry account. Lazar's session 201 goes through that in detail. I would highly recommend taking a look at that, because he goes through the actual setup and showcasing the full workflow of like a new issue gets created in Sentry that gets assigned a linear issue, and then inside linear you can actually assign that issue to the Seer agent, which will run the root cause analysis and potentially create a PR for you. So kind of like closes that loop end to end, where from a Sentry issue you get a linear issue, you get an auto fix, and you get a PR. Yep, as Alex mentioned in the chat, we are bringing up the survey, so please take a look, share it, or sorry, fill it out, and really appreciate your time, everyone that joined. Peter, thank you so much for showcasing your application and hanging out.
Thanks for bearing with me while I was struggling through trying to navigate things and try to get everything all together. This is so helpful. I feel so much more empowered now to like, I owe you a good cup of coffee now.
I will get, and I'll make sure that I have my grinder configured properly using your application. So
awesome. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you all.